In the shadow of the lonely mountain, Erebor stood as a beacon of dwarven resilience and ambition. Its halls, once echoing with the songs of Durin's folk, had been reclaimed by Thorin Oakenshield and his company after the defeat of Smaug, the terrible dragon. Yet, the death of the beast did not bring peace. Smaug's fall sent ripples across Middle-earth, awakening greed and stirring ancient rivalries. The vast treasure hoard within Erebor became a lodestone, drawing the eyes of men, elves, and darker forces. Far to the north, in the desolate wastes of Angmar, the necromancer later revealed as Sauron had fled Dol Guldur, but not before setting in motion a tide of destruction. His lieutenants, bolstered by orcs from Gundabad and goblins from the Misty Mountains, saw opportunity in the chaos following Smaug's demise. The stage was set for a conflict that would shake the foundations of the North, a battle not just for gold, but for survival, honor, and the future of Middle-earth. This is the story of the Battle of the Five Armies, a clash where courage and sacrifice determined the true victors. It is a tale of unlikely heroes, fragile alliances, and the cost of victory, woven from the threads of history as recounted by those who stood on the blood-soaked fields of Dale and Erebor. The air was thick with tension as autumn waned in the year 2941 of the Third Age. Thorin Oakenshield, now king under the mountain, stood atop the ramparts of Erebor, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The treasure within the mountain glittered in his mind, fueling a growing obsession. The Arkenstone, the heart of the mountain, remained lost to him, hidden by Bilbo Baggins, the Hobbit who had proven both loyal and cunning. Thorin's heart hardened, not only against the world beyond Erebor but against his own company. To the south, the men of Dale, led by Bard the Bowman, sought to rebuild their ruined city. Smaug's fire had left scars on both stone and spirit, and the people looked to Erebor's wealth for aid. Bard, a man of grim resolve, had slain the dragon with a single black arrow, earning him the title of hero. Yet, heroism did not fill empty bellies or rebuild homes. He marched north with a host of lakemen from Esgaroth, seeking recompense from Thorin for the destruction wrought by Smaug. At the same time, Thranduil, the elven king of Mirkwood, rode forth with a silken banner and a host of elven warriors. His motives were twofold: to reclaim elven treasures taken by Smaug and to assert his influence over the north. Thranduil's heart was not swayed by greed alone. He saw the rising shadow of Sauron's forces and knew that a weakened Erebor could invite disaster. His alliance with Bard was uneasy, born of necessity rather than trust. Thorin, however, saw only enemies. From the battlements, he watched the armies of men and elves encamp before Dale, their banners fluttering like a challenge. He sent ravens to summon his cousin, Dane Ironfoot, Lord of the Iron Hills, to bolster Erebor's defenses. The dwarfs fortified the mountain, sealing its gates and preparing for siege. Thorin's dragon sickness, a madness born of goldlust, clouded his judgment, blinding him to diplomacy. Bilbo Baggins, the unlikeliest of heroes, watched this escalation with growing dread. The Hobbit, small in stature but vast in courage, knew that war loomed. In a desperate bid to avert bloodshed, he stole away under the cover of his magic ring and delivered the Arkenstone to Bard and Thranduil. The gem, a symbol of Thorin's kingship, could be a bargaining chip to force peace. Yet, Bilbo's act of betrayal, though noble in intent, only deepened Thorin's rage when it was revealed. As the armies of men, elves, and dwarfs faced each other, a darker force stirred. From the north and west, vast hosts of orcs and goblins marched, led by Bolg, son of Azog. Their aim was not merely plunder but dominion. Sauron's will drove them, seeking to crush the free peoples of the north before they could unite. The stage was set for a battle that would engulf 5 armies, the men of Dale, the elves of Mirkwood, the dwarfs of Erebor and the Iron Hills, and the combined forces of orcs and goblins. The first clash came not with swords but with words. Bard and Thranduil approached Erebor's gates under a banner of parley, the Arkenstone gleaming in Bard's hands. Thorin, standing atop the ramparts, saw the gem and roared in fury, accusing Bilbo of treachery. The Hobbit, trembling yet defiant, admitted his deed, hoping to save his friend from madness. Thorin cast Bilbo out, vowing never to yield to the demands of men or elves. Bard's terms were clear: a share of the treasure to rebuild Dale and Esgaroth, and the return of elven heirlooms to Thranduil. Thorin refused, his pride and sickness blinding him to reason. The parley ended in stalemate, and the armies of men and elves prepared to besiege the mountain. Archers took position, and siege engines were assembled, though Bard hoped to avoid open war. Within Erebor, the dwarfs worked tirelessly, fortifying the gates and readying their defenses. Thorin's company, Berlin, Dwalin, Fili, Kili, and the others stood by their king, though doubt gnawed at their hearts. The air grew heavy with the weight of impending conflict, and the dwarfs sang songs of Durin to bolster their resolve. Hope arrived with the dawn as Dane Ironfoot's army crested the hills. The dwarfs of the Iron Hills, clad in iron and bearing warhammers, marched with disciplined fury. Dane, a warrior of iron will, had answered Thorin's call without hesitation. His arrival shifted the balance, emboldening Thorin to consider a sortie against the besiegers. Yet, Dane's scouts brought dire news. A vast host of orcs and goblins was descending from the north, their numbers dwarfing all others. The armies of men, elves, and dwarfs faced a bitter truth. Their quarrel over gold was a petty thing compared to the tide of darkness approaching. Thranduil, ever pragmatic, proposed a truce to face the common enemy. Bard agreed, his heart heavy with the knowledge that Dale would bear the brunt of the assault. Thorin, still gripped by dragon sickness, refused to join the alliance, though Dane's arrival gave him pause. As night fell, the orcs and goblins drew near, their war drums echoing like a heartbeat of doom. The free peoples prepared for a battle they could not avoid, their fates intertwined by necessity. Bilbo, now among the men and elves, clutched his small sword, Sting, and wondered if a hobbit could make a difference in such a storm. The Battle of the Five Armies erupted with the fury of a winter storm. The orcs and goblins, led by Bolg, descended upon Dale and Erebor in a tide of black armor and cruel blades. Their numbers seemed endless, spilling across the valley like a plague. Wargs, fell beasts ridden by orc captains, howled as they charged, and crude siege towers rumbled toward the walls of Dale. Bard took command of the men, positioning archers along the ruined walls of Dale and leading spearmen to hold the city's gates. His black arrows flew true, felling warg riders and orc champions. Thranduil's elves, resplendent in silver and green, formed ranks of spearmen and archers, their bows singing a deadly song. The elven blades gleamed as they cut through goblin ranks, and Thranduil himself fought with the grace and ferocity of an ancient warrior. Dane's dwarfs, though not allied with Bard and Thranduil, joined the fray against the orcs. Their warhammers crushed skulls, and their ironclad ranks held firm against the tide. Dane fought at the forefront, his axe a blur of death, shouting defiance in the tongue of Durin's folk. Yet, Thorin remained within Erebor, watching from the ramparts, his heart torn between pride and duty. The battle raged across multiple fronts. In Dale, the men fought street by street, their courage bolstered by Bard's leadership. The elves held the flanks, their arrows thinning the orc ranks before they could close. The dwarfs of the Iron Hills carved a bloody path through the goblin vanguard, seeking to reach Erebor's gates. Above, the skies darkened with smoke and the cries of carrion birds. Bilbo, caught in the chaos, found himself among the men of Dale. His small size and quick wits kept him alive as he darted through the melee, Sting flashing against goblin foes. He saw horrors, men torn apart by wargs, elves overwhelmed by sheer numbers, dwarfs standing defiant amid piles of slain enemies. Yet, he also saw heroism, a lake man shielding a child from a warg's jaws, an elf dragging a wounded comrade to safety, a dwarf roaring a challenge as he faced a troll alone. The orcs pressed their advantage, their numbers allowing them to absorb losses that would have broken lesser armies. Bolg, a towering figure clad in black iron, directed the assault with cunning, sending waves of goblins to weaken the defenders before committing his elite warriors. The free peoples held, but their strength waned, and the tide seemed poised to overwhelm them. Within Erebor, Thorin Oakenshield wrestled with his demons. The dragon sickness had clouded his mind, but the sounds of battle, dwarven war cries, the screams of the dying, pierced his heart. He saw his kin fighting without him, saw the men and elves he had scorned standing against a common foe. The words of Bilbo, Gandalf, and his own company echoed in his mind, urging him to cast aside his pride. In a moment of clarity, Thorin threw off the chains of madness. He gathered his company, Fili, Kili, Berlin, Dwalin, and the others, and declared that they would not hide while others fought for Erebor. The dwarfs of the mountain, few but fierce, armed themselves and prepared to sally forth. Thorin, clad in ancestral armor and bearing the sword Orcrist, led them to the gates. With a mighty cry, the gates of Erebor burst open, and Thorin's company charged into the fray. Their arrival was a thunderbolt, shattering the orc lines besieging the mountain. Thorin fought like a king of old, his blade cleaving through foes, his voice rallying the dwarfs. Fili and Kili, his nephews, fought at his side, their youth and courage a beacon to all. The sight of Thorin's charge galvanized the defenders. Bard, atop a ruined tower, saw the dwarven banner and roared for his men to press forward. Thranduil, cutting through a knot of goblins, acknowledged Thorin's valor with a nod, their enmity set aside. Dane, blooded but unbowed, laughed as he saw his cousin join the fight, and the dwarfs redoubled their efforts. The battle turned, if only for a moment. The combined forces of men, elves, and dwarfs pushed back the orc vanguard, reclaiming ground in Dale and driving the enemy from Erebor's slopes. Bilbo, caught up in the surge, found himself near Thorin and managed a breathless greeting. Thorin, his eyes clear of madness, clasped the hobbit's shoulder and apologized for his harsh words, naming Bilbo a true friend. Yet, the orcs were far from defeated. Bolg, seeing the tide shift, unleashed his reserves, elite Gundabad orcs and monstrous trolls. The defenders, already weary, faced a renewed assault that threatened to break their lines. Thorin, determined to end the battle, set his sights on Bolg, knowing that the orc leader's death could shatter the enemy's resolve. As the battle reached its climax, hope appeared in the skies. The great eagles of the misty mountains, led by Gwyhi the Windlord, swooped down upon the orc host. Their talons tore through wargs and trolls, and their cries scattered the goblins. With them came Beorn, the skin changer, in the form of a massive bear. His roars shook the battlefield as he crushed orcs beneath his paws, a force of nature unleashed. The arrival of the eagles and Beorn tipped the scales, but the cost of victory was yet to be paid. Thorin, Fili, and Kili fought their way toward Bolg, cutting through his bodyguard. The orc chieftain, a warrior of terrifying strength, met them in a clash that would be sung of for generations. Thorin struck mighty blows, but Bolg's ferocity was unmatched. Fili and Kili, protecting their uncle, fell to Bolg's blade, their lives snuffed out in defense of their king. Thorin, heartbroken but unyielding, faced Bolg alone. The duel was brutal, each combatant trading blows that would have felled lesser foes. Thorin's skill and courage prevailed, and he drove Orcrist through Bolg's heart, slaying the orc leader. Yet, the victory came at a terrible price. Thorin, mortally wounded, collapsed beside his fallen nephews, his strength spent. Elsewhere, the battle turned decisively. The death of Bolg broke the orc host's spirit, and the combined might of men, elves, dwarfs, eagles, and Beorn routed the enemy. Goblins fled into the hills, pursued by elven archers and dwarven axes. The fields of Dale were littered with the slain, and the rivers ran red with blood. Bilbo found Thorin amid the carnage, the dwarf king lying beneath the shadow of the mountain. In his final moments, Thorin spoke of friendship and forgiveness, bidding Bilbo to return to the Shire and live a life of peace. With his last breath, he named Dane his heir, entrusting Erebor to his cousin. Bilbo wept, mourning the friend he had lost and the cost of their adventure. The Battle of the Five Armies ended with the rout of the orcs and goblins, but victory was bittersweet. The fields of Dale and the slopes of Erebor were a testament to the cost. Thousands lay dead, among them Thorin, Fili, Kili, and countless men, elves, and dwarfs. The survivors, weary and wounded, gathered to honor the fallen and decide the future. Dane Ironfoot was crowned king under the mountain, his rule tempered by the lessons of the battle. He proved a wise and generous leader, sharing Erebor's wealth to rebuild Dale and Esgaroth. Bard, now king of Dale, forged a lasting alliance with the dwarfs, ensuring prosperity for both peoples. Thranduil, his treasures restored, returned to Mirkwood, his respect for men and dwarfs deepened by their shared sacrifice. Bilbo Baggins, the hobbit who had sparked the chain of events, declined great rewards, taking only a small chest of gold and silver. His true treasure was the story he carried home, a tale of courage, friendship, and the fragility of victory. Gandalf, who had watched the battle unfold, accompanied Bilbo back to the Shire, knowing that the hobbit's role in Middle-earth's fate was far from over. So, who won the Battle of the Five Armies? The orcs and goblins were defeated, their ambition to dominate the north shattered. The men of Dale, the Elves of Mirkwood, and the Dwarfs of Erebor and the Iron Hills emerged victorious, their alliance forged in blood. Yet, the true victors were those who rose above greed and pride: Thorin, who redeemed himself in his final charge; Bilbo, whose courage averted greater bloodshed; and the countless unnamed heroes who stood together against darkness. The battle was a triumph of unity, a reminder that victory is not measured in gold or glory, but in the bonds forged and the sacrifices made. Its echoes would linger in the songs of Middle-earth, a testament to the resilience of the free peoples and the enduring power of hope. Years later, as Bilbo sat in Bag End, penning his memoirs, he reflected on the Battle of the Five Armies. The Shire was peaceful, its hills untouched by the wars of the wider world. Yet, Bilbo's heart carried the weight of those days: the clash of steel, the cries of the fallen, and the fleeting moments of camaraderie amid chaos. Erebor thrived under Dane's rule, its halls ringing with the songs of dwarven craftsmen. Dale grew into a bustling city, its markets filled with the laughter of children who would never know Smaug's fire. Mirkwood, though still shadowed, stood as a bulwark against the growing darkness in the south. The alliance of men, elves, and dwarfs held strong, a legacy of the battle that had tested them all. In the wider world, the defeat of the Orcs delayed Sauron's plans, giving the free peoples time to prepare for the greater war to come. Bilbo, though he did not know it, had played a part in that struggle, his small actions rippling across the ages. As he closed his book, Bilbo smiled, thinking of Thorin's final words: "If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world." The Battle of the Five Armies was a victory not just for swords and shields, but for the ideals that endured: friendship, courage, and the hope of a better tomorrow. And so, the tale of the Five Armies passed into legend, a story of triumph and tragedy, of heroes great and small, and of a hobbit who proved that even the smallest can change the course of history.